In today's edition of Business Live, local industries yearn for more government support even after the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. We'll hear from the Association of Ghana Industries. Also, IMF pushes for an increase in taxes to contain rising debt stock and reduce government's dependency on aid. Plus, Ghana's risk index of 53.9% places it first out of 4 top West and Central African countries. That is, in terms of having the best investment climate. I'm Israel Lyon, and Business Live comes up in a bit. Local industries are demanding more support from government even after the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. Some manufacturing firms that were on the verge of collapse picked up strongly as the government was forced to source most of its PPEs and medical equipment locally due to global restrictions. But as the economy opens up gradually, there are fears local industries will be left to their fate. Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, Achimota, says the need for assistance cannot be underestimated.
Well, it is a bit early in the days, but I would wish that it really happens the way you said it. That indeed during the COVID period, goods from outside, reduced significantly, and local production was stepped up in certain specific products, not all products. For products such as the hand sanitizers, some of the medical products, and so on and so forth. So for those ones, I think where we are now, what has helped is that in doing so, we have built certain level of capacity. Companies that were not even producing it entered into that market and they are producing it. Those that were already producing increased their capacity to produce. So for those products, I think we have adequate capacity. And one would expect that going forward, when it comes to government procurement, for example, we'll continue to place emphasis on those products that are produced locally. So we wish it stays. But I think that the challenge is still there, that when everything normalizes throughout the world, competition is going to grow again. And at that point, if the expansion we had here is not strong enough to enjoy economies of scale, and the conditions are not conducive enough to produce at a very competitive price, the competition when it comes, we may still have a challenge. So, and governments, and like all other consumers, we always look at the cheapest possible cost, of course, quality also taken into account. So we can't just say that because there was increase in demand for locally manufactured products during that period, it will continue to stay. Other factors will come in, but I think that whatever it will take to help make our local production competitive, let's do so that even if we open the market as the COVID period is over and things normalizes, even if we open up, we will still be so competitive that the product that will come in will still not be able to compete with us. In that case, then we can stabilize the local production and consumption. Then we are in good business.
The International Monetary Fund is pushing for some tax increases to help contain rising debt stock and support government's quest to reduce dependency on aid. The fund raised these concerns at the launch of its Regional Economic Outlook report in Washington, D.C. Georgia has more.
The IMF believes that this is part of several measures that government can consider to help deal with its rising debt stock. The fund, for instance, believes that Ghana's total debt stock in relation to the size of the economy in percentage terms would hit 77% by the close of this year. That might not be good for a low middle-income country like Ghana and the pressure that it will put on government finances. The country's total debt stock currently stands at around 263 billion Ghana cedis, ending July this year. But responding to a question posed by Joy Business, the director of the African Department, Aidoo speaking from Washington, D.C., believes that reviewing the country's revenue mobilization drive could help correct us, especially at a time that Ghana is poised to move ahead with less dependency on aid.
As the President has been saying, Ghana beyond aid, that's absolutely the right vision. And of course, that aid has to be replaced by tax revenues and other permanent domestic sources of financing rather than debt. And so effecting that transfer is really what's going to be key. And we'll be working with the government through the Article 4 process to provide technical advice, whatever the government needs.
But with the IMF's projection of the debt-to-GDP ratio hitting 77%, maybe for some, it's just a matter of time in terms of the IMF and the World Bank classifying Ghana as a high-distress country and the real challenge that will present to the economy, the possible impact on the cost of borrowing and how that would impact on government finances going forward. In the 2020 budget, government, for instance, is setting aside some 21 billion Ghana cedis just for paying interest on loans. The country currently spends significant amounts of revenue raised to pay its debts and salaries of the public sector workers, leaving little for capital projects. But the question still stands, are Ghanaians ready to pay more taxes to deal with this challenge, especially looking at the cost of borrowing and its impact on the economy? Or whether it's about how these taxes are used, are they going to the right sectors of the economy to deal with this challenge?
Ghana's risk index of 53.9% has placed it first, ahead of 4 top West and Central African countries. That's according to an assessment by Fitch Solutions, the research arm of ratings agency Fitch. This means Ghana is the best placed country to invest in the ECOWAS and Central Africa regions. Charles Nixon Yeboah has been studying the various risk elements and reports.
The country's high score of both political and operational risk index propelled it to the first position ahead of Gabon, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Cameroon. According to Fitch Solutions, a high score index means a lower risk in terms of investment climate. The nation scored 69.7 and 72.9% for the short and long-term political risk, while its 44.1% operational risk index score placed it higher than the other 4 countries assessed. For the economic risk index, the nation recorded 41 and 51.6% for the shorter and longer term respectively. The country's economic performance will, however, trail Ivory Coast, which will become the fastest growing economy this year, and Nigeria in both the short and long term. However, Ghana's overall high rank index pushes it as the best place to do business in West and Central Africa. This is largely because the uncertainty associated with investing here, and more specifically the degree to which that uncertainty could lead to losses for investors, is very low. The country's economic pointers have looked good this year despite COVID-19. Growth is expected to hover around 1% this year and make it a top performer globally, while inflation and exchange rates have remained low and relatively stable. Though the debt level is worrying, it is not likely the nation will default in its loan repayments.
The director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quarte, is casting doubts over the government's end-of-year inflation target, despite consistent decline in the rates in the last couple of months. Inflation declined marginally to reach 10.4% in September, largely influenced by food prices. This has convinced analysts that government is likely to meet its target of 8.5%. But Professor Quarte disagrees. He spoke earlier on the marketplace.
Well, it's my belief that the government would miss this target narrowly for 2 reasons. You know, in the last quarter, there is demand pressure, especially for Christmas purchases and the rest. Then also, we are in an election year, and December is quite a busy period where demand pressure also picks up quite significantly. So based on these 2, I don't expect this target to be met. It would have been worse, but for COVID, so some real or some incomes have been lost. People have lost their jobs. Some parts of the economy or economic activity is not at its full capacity. So there is also the income effect where people don't really have enough income to spend. So there will be a balance, and on the balance of all these factors, I expect the inflation rate to inch close to the target, but I'm not sure we'll be able to meet the target based on 5% as predicted.
I want to ask you what, by your own projections, what you think the target would likely be by the end of the year. But I want to run you through what the IMF's forecast has been, which is 11.6%. And I want to know if this is achievable.
Sorry, 11 for inflation?
Yes, end of year inflation rate of 11.6%.
Oh, yeah, that is certainly achievable. I expect something below that. Something in the range of 9 to 10.5%. I think that is achievable. However, it will come with a lot of work if we do not overspend, especially during this heavy campaign period, if there is not too much supply of money in the system. But the good news is that I think agriculture, food inflation has not been very rapid or significant like it used to be. I think our food production has helped because of COVID and the closure of the borders. We have learned to produce more of what we consume. So on the balance of all of this, I expect us to be in the range of 9 to 10.5%.
Right. And aside from checking overspending, what else can government really do to ensure that, we get a favorable rate at the end of the year?
Well, the issue about growing the economy, we've seen food production increase. We've seen some support to households, also the electricity and water tariff, for instance. So if this is maintained, at least if electricity prices are not increased or fuel prices are not increased astronomically, then it's very likely we might also meet the target. But I expect the real sector, continuous injection of funds and incentives into the real sector so that agriculture production, manufacturing, etc. would also increase. So we minimize the supply factors that cause inflation.
The Achimota Rural Bank is projecting a rise in profit margins despite setbacks posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. To mitigate the impact of the pandemic on operations, the bank has restructured policies to keep the business afloat. This includes improving the use of mobile technology in banking and customer-focused policies. Chief Executive Officer Dr. Stephen Safu-Kantanka reveals the response of clients to the new arrangement has contributed to the success. Nana Ajima was at the 37th annual general meeting of the bank and filed this report.
Despite a difficult financial year in 2019, the Achimota Rural Bank recorded a profit after tax of over 3 million cedis. There was, however, a marginal dip in the profits realized in the previous year. Board Chairman Patrick Osu says the drop in profit could be attributed to the cleanup of the financial sector in the year under review.
There were a lot of anxiety among our clients. So initially, when the reform started, speculations here and there also caused a bit of disruption. But I would say that due to the assurances that the Bank of Ghana gave and our own effort reaching out to our clients, we bounced back.
Nonetheless, customer confidence in the financial institution has bounced back as the bank re-strategized to compete. Some of the measures include expansion to reach more clients, leading to opening of a new branch at Bantama.
There is an emerging market at the race course where we have a lot of our displaced clients from Central Market and the redeveloped Kajitia. So we decided to chase them up there and make business with them. Apart from that, that place is also another emerging business enclave.
In response to COVID-19 pandemic, the bank improved its digitized services, enabling clients to transact business in the period of the lockdown. Beyond responding to business needs of clients, an extension in payment of loans was instituted. Dr. Stephen Safu-Kantanka is Chief Executive Officer.
What we did was to give a COVID relief to our customers, especially those who have taken loans, especially those who were teaching in the private schools. The schools have been closed down, they were not being paid. So we met them, had a discussion with them, and we gave them 6 months moratorium where we're not going to charge extra interest.
For Joy Business, Nana Ojima reporting.
Some fintechs have moved to complement government's efforts in curbing cybercrime. Government recently unveiled the Security Operations Center with the aim to monitor the cyber security space of the entire National Data Center. It is against this backdrop that the Managing Director of leading remittance transactions portal Zpay, Andrew Techiapia, has called for joint stakeholder consultation to ensure the intervention yields the needed results.
We use CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is like the Maybach in security. They actually give you $1 million that if you're hacked, they'll pay you back. Our business is very light. We're very dependent on high-level security. We have firewalls. We have a demilitarized zone. I mean, we're like crazy and anal about security because we want to go to bed and sleep well. Well, let me answer you this way. I think the time has come for joint stakeholdership. The time has come for the security personnel, the security apparatus, regulatory platforms, players like ourselves and the banks to come together and not only introduce 2- and 3-factor authentications, but also look at social engineering. I think we need to start to criminalize that activity from within, because a lot of times social engineering is from within and not from outside. And so the time has come for us to start looking at that.
The Chief Executive Officer of We Power Authority, Fred Owari, believes the educational content of the youth should be relooked as the world moves into technology and robotics. He said advanced knowledge in technology would make things easier for the people in the dam's catchment area, while the use of robotics in teaching would excite the understanding in the study of science. He spoke at the ceremony to inaugurate and hand over the Fred Owari Innovation Center he financed to the authority. Precious Semevo has more.
Innovation Center, financed by the Chief Executive Officer of We Power Authority, Fred Owari, has a state-of-the-art ICT and robotics lab, science lab and a fully stocked library. At a short ceremony at the Bui resettlement site to inaugurate and hand over the center to BPA, Fred Owari said his passion to see the youth prepared for a robotic and technological world inspired him.
We need to look at the educational content, not just the English literature, history, but then the world is going to run on technology and robotics, and so the basics should be in science. And that was the main motivation. And as I said, was something that I personally did, that I wanted to do for the community. Because I'm coming here for the second time, I asked myself, what lasting benefit can I leave with the people here? And I thought of the children and the free education policy of the government. You heard what the children said, that they've been hearing some of the technologies and names of the equipment which are to be used, but they haven't even seen them.
He expects BPA to support the center to ensure the youth within the Bui enclave continue to benefit from scientific and technological teachings.
And I'm talking about the entity BPA itself, to use it as an arm of its social responsibility programs and make investment in the scientific and technological teachings that they need to give to the children from this community. I have every confidence that because I've done this with the utmost goodwill, succeeding directors would also participate in this same gesture.
The chief of Bui, Nana Kwejowo II, who installed Fred Owari as development chief with a stool named Semenshia Osiadeyo Nana Ababio Owari, said students of Bui will no longer study science in abstract. He predicts the change beneficiaries of the lab will bring to the community a few years to come.
Previously, there was no laboratory and the people were studying science in abstract. So it was not something that was happening then. But now that they themselves will perform their experiments and then try to draw conclusions. And by so doing, I think it will, improve upon their intellectual capacity. Within 5 or 10 years, we will also be able to produce doctors, engineers, as well as technicians who will come back and then be able to help us to bring a change in the society. If he had given us money, we'll spend it.
Some of the excited students of Zpay Basic School spoke to Joy News.
I'm happy to have a laboratory like this. I don't see some before.
Some people say that we don't have a computer laboratory, so they won't learn. Now that we have the lab, we will learn.
For Joy News, Precious Semevo, Zpay.
An Africa Export and Import Bank, together with the Secretariat of the Continental Trade Area, is making progress with moves to reduce the cost of transacting business among African countries under the Trade Pact. The cost of doing business has been identified as a key challenge in promoting intra-Africa trade due to the unavailability of a common payment system for all the 54 countries. However, speaking with journalists in Accra, Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Wamkele Mene, hinted that the common trade platform is in the offing.
So you have to develop first, as a primary step, you have to develop a country's export capacity. And export development is at the core of this conference. So that businesses, private sector, small, medium enterprises, so that they know how to reach new markets on the African continent. So this is very much part of implementation of the AfCFTA, the pillar of export development.
You spoke about currency when it comes to trading among African nations and your collaboration with Afro-Exim Bank. Yeah. How far is it going? How soon are we going to have it? 1st January, is it possible?
Well, we are working as hard as we can to make sure that the Pan-African payments and settlement platform is rolled out and is up and running as early as possible next year. I'm not able to give timelines now because we're working with Afro-Exim Bank. However, we are fully conscious of the fact that it has to be up and running if we want to reduce the cost of transactions and the cost of trade in Africa. So we are trying to make sure that as we roll out the trading date on the 1st of January 2021, that the platform is rolled out at the same time. But it's difficult to give a deadline, but we're working as hard as we can to make sure that we achieve that objective. Well, we have rules. The AfCFTA agreement it creates obligations for state parties. There are rules that that every state party has to abide by. So we would have to look at the context. We would have to look at the merits of the issue. We would have to look to see what does the law say about a particular action that a state party takes. But remember that, that the agreement binds only state parties. If you have not ratified the agreement, you are not bound by it. But we intend to make sure that the rule of law in terms of the agreement itself, that it is fully applicable.
All right, and that'll be all for Business Live. I'm Israel Live. Thank you very much for watching. But I have Business Prime, Joy Prime coming up. Joy News Prime actually coming up at 7 o'clock. To stay tuned.